I'm Tina Jtic and I'm an author. There we go. How's that?
That's perfect. Can you tell me about your own mental health journey?
Oof, my own mental health journey. Sure. Um, I grew up in a home with mental health issues. I have a bipolar mother, so really heavy, some issues there. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's a mental issue. My father was pretty physically abusive, so there was that. And I'm throwing this one in there, and I don't care what anyone has to say. When I was 10, my parents joined a really strict religious cult. As far as I'm concerned, that has a lot to do with mental health as well. Thank you. I'm glad you agree with me.
Yeah.
Especially since this was not a love environment. This was a fear, don't ask questions, kind of environment. So those three things had a massive impact on my mental health when I was growing up. I left home at a pretty early age. I was still in high school, still in grade 12 when I left home. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I blocked childhood. So I remembered, the broad strokes you do. You remember the big defining moments, but for the most part, I really blocked childhood out. And this had a huge effect on me because now for the next 30 years, I have three significant partners in my life, and um, I'm dating my parents over and over again because that is what you do when you're broken, when you have issues, when you have all this trauma inside of you. Um, it- that is that like attracts like. So I ended up dating partners with some mental issues. The first one didn't love me back, so okay, unrequited love, that seemed normal. We probably all have that at some point in our lives, but it was really significant for me because I really pined over this person for a long time. Next person was an addict, so got to experience what that was like. Oosh. So serious narcissism on both of those. And then the third one was bipolar. So he ended up being my mother. And that's when it really smashed me in the face and sort of like made me take note and go, something's wrong here. Like my partner, I'm starting to see a pattern in my partners now. You need to date a couple partners before you find a pattern because one person does not make a pattern, right? So by the time I was on the third one, I also had new language in my life to be able to define what my pattern was, and it was narcissists. So that's been my brush with with mental illness, and obviously the effects on myself are a lot of really negative self-talk. Incredibly positive, bright, vibrant on the outside was my personality. I'm a Sagittarius. I'm just very outgoing, very happy-go-lucky. But my inner voice was really super hard and super critical. And I always just chalk this up to I had a degree in theater and I was a singer and you critique yourself, right? But in reality, it was my mother's inner voice and my childhood inner voice that was constantly telling me, you'll never be good enough. You'll never be anyone. I didn't want you. I don't love you. Never loved you. Will never love you. No one will ever love you. This is really what was hijacking my entire life was the programming.
And
Oh.
from there, what inspired you to create a book?
Ooh, well. So when I broke up with the third partner, when we separated ways, it was because I realized he was my mother, and that really brought me to my knees because I was angry at myself for not seeing it coming. Like, you get to be in your late 40s and you go, God, have I not learned any lessons yet? Like, seriously, how did I not see this coming? I've had such a pattern with narcissists. How did I not see this coming? And then, of course, when the relationship's over and you look back on it, you go, you did see this coming. Actually, from the very, very first day, you saw it coming, but you made excuses for his bad behavior because that's what we're programmed to do, right? Um, when we parted ways. So I was angry at him for deceiving me. I was angry at myself for not seeing it coming. And I was angry with the universe because I felt like yet this was yet just another punishment on my never ending life of being punished, right? Victim mentality, of course. And so that's when I really just, when I understood that that last one was bipolar, it brought me to my knees. It also started my spiritual awakening. So it was like coming from all angles. I started to have memories from childhood. It started to unlock childhood, stuff I had buried for a good long time. And I knew that there was something much, much bigger in play here. And it's also when I stopped asking the question, what's wrong with all the men out there? And I started to go, what is wrong with me? Something is wrong with me if the only kind of man I can attract into my life is a narcissist. What's wrong with me? And that's when I really, that was the breaking point where I sought help and looked for answers and wanted to fix me.
What
Yeah.
was it like getting all those feelings, ideas out on the page?
Whew. Well, so when I was falling apart in my, I was on my knees, I sought some spiritual help. And I went to a girlfriend and I said, I know you go to a lot of these classes and do all of these workshops. Do you have someone I can talk to? I need someone who really knows what they're doing. So she brought me to this channeler. And this channeler and I, we walked through my life, we walked through the patterns. And what I loved about her is how she also walked me through the generational trauma. She wanted me to understand that what was done to my parents is all they knew, and it's what they did to me. Did it make it okay? It does not make it okay. I'm not a narcissist. I didn't beat my children, so there is accountability, right? But it helps you to understand generational trauma and how powerful it is and how easy it is to pass it on to your kids. So once I went back and was able to do that, then the mandate was so here's some, we worked on a little of my own healing and a little bit of forgiveness. We just got that started, right? Because this process takes a while when there's a lot of people to forgive in your life. You can't just blanket forgive everybody. Doesn't work like that. You got to do far more in-depth work, right, than that. So the mandate afterwards was, and we want you to write a book, because if you're going through this, think about how many people that are out there are also going through this. And not only will you find your own healing as you start to write your memoir, but you're going to help so many other people. And when the memoir is finished, you're also going to take all the lessons you learned while you were writing to heal, and you're going to make a workbook after the memoir. That's what's coming next. So I had all this in my head and I'm going, oh my God, that's a lot. I'm not a writer. I've never written anything in my life, aside from high school. So it's like, oh my gosh, this is a huge thing to do. So I start writing in January 2020, and what happens? Boom, COVID, right? I lose my job. I lose everything. I didn't have a very big social circle to start with, but I certainly had zero by the time it was, over. And I had nothing but like 2 years to just sit in my own pain and trauma and childhood and mend it. And I did. I didn't waste a second because I was writing. When you're writing a book like that, in order to paint the picture for people, you need to go back and relive the experience. So I had to not just think about it or journal about it. I mean, I had to deep dive, because sometimes I'd be writing and I'd read the scene and I'd go, okay, you've got the action, you've got even what, like the color of the walls, like you've got the picture, but how did you feel? And I'd go, universe, how did I feel? Oh my God, all of a sudden I would have this like pain and weeping coming over me, and I'm like, that's how I feel. And I'd start to write it and I'd go, well, hot damn. Well, once you've done that, you can't just go, okay, well, take away the feeling now, I'm going to keep writing. No, now you got to heal that. whatever you're writing about at that moment, it's like, no, I need you to stop now. You're in the feels of it anyways. You may as well like, let's work on it. So it was kind of, thankfully, I didn't have a time limit on when I was writing this because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where it was going when I wrote the first draft. I didn't know how it was going to end or, you know what I mean? Like what the point was. So I just wrote about like every stage of my life and I healed as I wrote. So it was a really long writing process at first because I had so much healing to do and I had no one to say, I need some tools, please. Show me some tools. There was no one to ask. So I turned to YouTube. For the first time in my life, never been on YouTube in my life, I turned to YouTube and I'd be like, I need help, right? Like someone out there, and I'd open up YouTube and the first thing that would show up on the homepage would be like, how to heal your childhood trauma. And I'd go, oh, right. And I found the people that I resonated with, and I found lessons I understood. And I would go and listen to 100 different people try their things to see what was working for me because even while I was doing my own healing, I always had it in the back of my mind that I would be writing a book about how to heal afterwards. And I didn't want just one or two modalities. I don't think there's just one way to heal. I think there's many ways to heal. I think there are some milestones that need to happen to heal, but within those milestones, if you will, or mile markers, are so many different ways to get to the next step. And so I tried a lot of things. And even now, as I'm writing this healing workbook, I'm putting the things that I did, but I'm also putting like, try this, try this, try this. Yeah. And so that's kind of how it went for me. Writing and healing were hand in hand.
How does it feel for you to talk to other people with similar experiences?
It's really interesting now that I'm starting this sort of podcasting journey. I just started a couple weeks ago going on podcasts, trying to get my name out there. Often the podcaster themselves, because that's the only person I'm getting to speak to, right? I don't get to speak to the audience. I mean, we're speaking to the audience, but I don't,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's even interesting to me, even in the hosts, I can see where they are on their journey. I've had a couple hosts say to me, "Oh, I'm never going to forgive my abusers. They don't deserve that from me." And I go, "Ooh, you are I don't say this to them and it's not my place to judge, but I can go, you are on the beginning of your healing journey because if you haven't even gotten to forgiveness yet, like, I'm sorry we don't get to heal without forgiving. I don't care what anybody says. I've heard several very interesting things this week about forgiveness, but it's basic, right? It's a poison you're drinking every single day that you don't forgive, and you're wanting to know why they're not suffering. Well, you're drinking the poison, not them. They don't care. They don't even remember that you exist. You know what I mean? Like the pain is all yours, right? That's usually how it is. So I find that interesting. And then I see people who are halfway on their journey, and sometimes you get to say, well, here's one of the things that I did, and they go, oh, tell me more. I love that. I love that we always learn from each other. And also, we never ever stop healing. So we should never ever stop learning because there are so many layers to our healing. Not only is it the actual things that happened in this lifetime, then you have all the generational trauma that's piled on top of it. And then you have all your past lives and all the karma piled on top of that. We never stop healing. It gets easier, so much easier, but it never stops. Yeah. And I think that's beautiful.
Speaking of healing, can you tell me about your workbook?
Yes, yeah. So I started writing it in December. I finally had some time, and I actually just finished the first draft like 2 days ago. So I was really pleased
Oh,
with
nice.
myself. Yeah, because the memoir was like 4 years, right? This was like a month and a half, and I was going really. But to be fair, I had taken so much notes over the last 4 years that it was almost right there, anyways. Which was I didn't have that in the memoir, so that was starting from scratch. But I wanted to make sure again that there were just really practical and actionable things for people to do and on their own. Um, there are, again, so many beautiful modalities that are out there, Reiki and body work and coaching and so many wonderful things. Not everybody can afford that. And if you're living fully in your pain, you're probably not in a manifesting state either, right? Where you're doing really well in your life. I mean, everybody's different. We all have different financial situations, but not everybody can afford those things. When I first started, COVID hit, I lost my job. I couldn't afford to go out and do Reiki and all of those things. I wanted to do them. I didn't have the funds. So one of the things that was really important in the memoir was to make sure that you needed zero tools except a pen and paper, which the paper's in the book. It's right there. I left blank pages for journaling and stuff. So I gave a lot of writing prompts, but really actionable ones that get right to the root of the problem. And I start at the root chakra. I work on the first three chakras because this is where so much childhood trauma and adolescent years and teenage years, right? All the years where we're building who we are programmed into these first three chakras. So that's where the work needs to be done. You need to work in healing these ones before you can ever get to these chakras up top, right? Because this is all about your spirituality. Well, you're nowhere near that when you're first starting. You need to start with, fixing you first, right? Then we'll worry about the enlightenment because it all kind of comes hand in hand, but it has to start with the healing. This is the lower chakras. So yeah, I walk through. I find as well that it's easy to say to people, you have to forgive at some point. But if it's like step one, forgive, that's not really actionable either, is it? You're still fully living in your pain. You're not ready to forgive just yet. So I have all the steps to bring you towards finding the grace to be able to forgive. There are so many steps that come before that, that help us to be able to forgive. And yeah, so that's the book. I'm planning to have it out June is what we're aiming for. Yeah, I'll be handing it over to an editor soon. So I know all these things take a little bit of time, but yeah, I'd like to have it out as soon as possible.
How is the book and the workbook help your own healing process?
Well, while I wrote the memoir, all I did was heal. I mean, top to bottom, I healed. And again, never finished, but I healed all those big heavy hitters. And I had to take on some actionable tools myself while I was healing. So thankfully, I had people who gave me really good journal prompts. And then I would listen to other people who would talk about, for example, the importance of meditation and grounding, right? Gosh, you need to be grounded when you start to heal because this is what's anchoring you so that you can, be grounded enough to heal. And Earth Mother Gaia, she's always got our back. So I really learned about meditation, yoga. For me, because I had a kind of a busted hip at the time, so yoga specifically was just really good for just making me more fluid. But also because it's mind, body, and spirit when you do yoga, it's just, there's so much trauma in our physical body. It's so important that we move. Whether you like to dance or walk in the forest, whatever, it doesn't matter. Again, this is where, again, it's not just yoga. Just move. Just find what movement you love. So, because we're mind, body, and spirit, right? So meditation became really important. Yoga became really important. And spiritual hygiene became very important. Meaning keeping my space clean. Every day I incense and I do a mantra and I clean my home. I clean myself energetically, especially because we go out into the world and we collect all this. Ugh, it's out there and we come back home and we're like, gosh, I was in such a good mood when I left today and now I'm in such a foul mood. What's happening? Half the time it's not even your crap. It's everyone else's. Because empaths are going to just absorb all this energy willy-nilly, right? Until they learn how to put up boundaries, control their empathy. Most people don't know how. So again, that hygiene of like, hey, this isn't even mine, so I'm sending it back to the sender. I'm not going to sit here being in a bad mood when it's not even mine. So give that back. I'm going back to being a happy me. So these are some things that I picked up, and it's become a daily practice. a daily practice. I think where sometimes we go wrong is we think, oh, if I meditate for an hour once a week or do exercise once a week for an hour, you're so much far better off to meditate every day for 5 minutes than to do it once a week for an hour, because it's doing it every day that makes it a practice. And
That's a good
everyone can
point.
find 5 minutes, right? Yeah. It's easier to find 5 minutes than an hour. When you got kids and you're working and, life gets busy. I get it. Life gets busy.
Yeah, that's something I should do, honestly, because I have treatment for I live with bipolar disorder too, so I have
Ah,
treatment for that, and uh, therapist, and my family's been great and all that, but I don't focus enough on either yoga or anything like physical activity.
if we only ever treat the mind, right? We're mind, body, spirit. So movement is just so good for us. Again, it just moves that stuff out. And I applaud you, by the way. I want to acknowledge what you just said. I applaud you for acknowledging that you're bipolar and for asking for treatment, because this is where so many people with mental illness go wrong, right? It's such a stigma to talk about it or to admit it, and let alone to go and get help. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Good for you.
My goal is hopefully, more people would be more open to, tell their story and not. So hopefully I could help as many people as I can.
Yeah, bring awareness. That's good. Yeah. Grounding is really important, especially for bipolar disorder, because you're all over the place, right? Your emotions
Yeah.
are hijacking you all the time. So by meditating and grounding our roots into Gaia, we're not so like fly off the handle. We become grounded, right? So and walking in nature, oof, same thing. If you don't like to meditate, this is where I say there's more than one modality. I'll
Right.
often do a walking meditation by walking through the forest, take my headphones out, and actually be in the forest, listening to the sounds of the forest, communing with Mother Earth. I always feel amazing after a walk in the forest. That's my favorite, meditation, if you will, walking meditation. Yeah.
What would you say to anyone going through a tough time?
I would say change isn't going to just slap you in the face. You need to go find it, right? You need to go seek change in your life. If what's happening in your life isn't working for you anymore, make change. It's never too late, not ever, not even for 1 second is it too late to have peace in your heart. And there is always, always room to forgive, to find inner peace, and to find true self-love for yourself. And when you learn to find love for yourself, you'll start attracting different people in your life who will love you too, because you'll change the way you view the world and the way you view yourself. And then that changes the frequency in your body, and like attracts like. You want people to love you, you need to learn to love yourself.
So with the book and the workbook, where do you want to see your mission in the next few years?
Well, once the workbook is out, uh, I have a second workbook in mind. I might do it, I might not, only because I focused on the lower chakras for the first one. So I thought, I actually have all these other neat things. Like once we've gone through the heavy lifting of healing, if you will, and I have all these just really cool spiritual practices that I really, really enjoy. And that's where the enlightenment part comes. So I'm tempted to then put out a second workbook to kind of cover the other half of that. We'll see how it goes. Um, I imagine I haven't thought that far in advance. I'm really just following the my soul's guidance at this point. And so it was like, write a memoir, write the workbook, and then we'll talk. And I'm like, okay. So, I'm operating on faith that all these things that are happening. So once this is out, then there will probably be some more writing, but I imagine at some point public speaking will happen as well. And I don't know how that modality looks just yet. I am a public speaker by trade, so it is logical that I would do public speaking. I've been an MC for a long time, so yeah. So we'll see. But I haven't planned how that goes yet. I'm still on like this step.
Right.
Write the second book. Yeah, get it out there. Yeah.
How can people reach out to you and learn more?
So if you're just interested in purchasing the memoir, this is available on Amazon and it's called Finding My Sovereignty. So you can just go on Amazon and find it there. But if you'd like to go to my website, then I also have links to Amazon there. And I have all the podcasts that I've been on there. I'm new to it, so I only have like 4 up right now. But they're getting they'll be put on there. And the website is called www.sovereign&sage. So kind of like my books, Finding My Sovereignty. So it's Sovereign and Sage, all one word, .com, sovereignandsage.com.